I'm so thankful I'm not a woman. And before you go cancel,
I've sat back in disbelief, shock, and sorrow as my life's work has been unfairly ripped away from me. 2 nights ago, I received an email notifying me that 15 of my videos had been copyright claimed and blocked by Toei Animation. 1 hour later, that number rose to 28, and when I woke up this morning, it had reached a total of 150 videos that my audience now can no longer see and that I cannot monetize. To put that into perspective, because myself and my team work on a single video per week, that equates to almost 3 years worth of work, and as a result, the main source of my company's income is now gone.
with Mark reiterating that these claims don't just hurt him, he has a full-time staff, he has a family that he provides for. Very important to this story is that Mark stresses his problem isn't just with Toei Animation, right? Saying, it's not just like they're the big bad. Instead, saying that his situation shoots right to the heart of the problem with YouTube's Content ID system.
I take my job very seriously. Because of this, I ensure that both myself and my employees adhere strictly to the fair dealings and fair use policies as outlined by YouTube and within my own country and other countries. I am shocked and appalled that I, someone that tirelessly dedicates himself to a fair use practice, has to accept and bend the knee as my life's work gets obliterated before me by a massive company that clearly has no regard or respect for the rules outlined by YouTube themselves.
Though there, it's been pointed out that Japan's copyright law does actually lack a fair use provision, and notably by law, authors do have the, quote, right to preserve the integrity of their work and its title against any distortion, mutilation, or other modification against their will. In fact, the law is so strong there right now that there's actually proposed legislation in the country to address an issue that's keeping a lot of old games from getting re-released. It's likely on a legal level one of the big questions here is which country's copyright laws apply to Mark's case. But that aside, as Mark notes, writing reviews isn't some unique venture, noting that it exists in pretty much every format that you could imagine: radio, podcast, TV, the list goes on. But also adding there that those other mediums don't have to, quote, contend with the same insane treatments those that produce on YouTube do. And on top of all of that, saying that a video uploaded by Stephen Colbert's late night show last week is more footage from Toei than some of his own videos that got claimed did, or is it kind of pointing to a double standard for big productions versus smaller or more homegrown creators? In one example, even noting that 9 of his videos were even taken down featuring no actual animation from Toei, instead saying that all the drawings in those videos came from his own company, and adding,
and so effectively, if Dragon Ball was in the title, it was removed.
And from there, Mark then details how he believes that YouTube's system is fundamentally broken, saying that he's disputed copyright claims in the past, but the dispute goes directly to the claimant, who then gets to decide in 30 days whether or not to revoke their claim.
That's right. The company that put the claim there in the first place, with no incentive to be honest or thorough in this instance, gets to decide the legitimacy of my dispute.
If that dispute then gets denied, which Mark says is having another 30 days, and the claimant to go directly to court. From there, the claimant has 2 weeks to respond, but as Mark notes,
here's the kicker: they never respond. And by default, my video gets reinstated, which means they claimed my video, prevented me from taking that revenue, killed its momentum, and put me under a tremendous amount of stress for effectively nothing.
With Mark claiming that this 3-month process has to be done for each and every claim he wants to dispute. In this case, that would be 150 disputes, with him also claiming that YouTube doesn't allow you to file multiple claims at once. And if true, that means that appealing every video here would potentially take nearly 40 years.
And despite knowing that all of these videos will eventually be reinstated, I need to follow this bureaucratic dance well into my late 60s.
And look, we're working on this. We reached out to YouTube because I don't know. I've never, and I don't know anyone who's ever been hit with 150 Content ID blocks all at once. But either way, you're talking about a massive amount of work to have to defend yourself from every single one of these claims. And regarding YouTube's system, the day before Mark posted this video, the platform ironically released its first ever copyright transparency report, saying there that 99% of the content claims in the first half of 2021 went through its automated system, adding that most go undisputed and that 60% of all disputed claims usually fall in favor of the uploader. But get this, you know what really kind of twisted the knife for Mark?
Toei actually approached me themselves earlier this year to help them promote a series of concerts they were looking to hold across the Americas, which I think highlights a fundamental and horrid hypocrisy in this circumstance. In one breath, Toei is happy to take down 150 of my videos for quite literally no reason, and in the next breath, they see me as a great mechanism or vessel for promoting their works. Which is it? Either YouTube creators serve as a vessel for promotion or we don't, but it can't be both.
Now that said, we don't know how Toei Animations is broken down. It's possible that you have different teams handling 2 different events, left hand not talking to the right hand, left hand, my brain works. But regardless of what the breakdown of the company looks like, I see and I hear that, I go, what the fuck? You have this company, Toei Animations, and apparently part of the company is like still 20 years back going like, people are stealing our content. Meanwhile, you seemingly have other people at the company that realize the value of creators like Mark and so many others. Like, once again, film.
I cannot in good conscience support a company that actively disrespects, despises, and destroys its own community like this. Toei Animation, you do not have my support, and if what I've said here today has resonated with any of you at all watching, I encourage both creators and viewers alike to join me in solidarity and not support this film.
And here's the final kind of unfortunate thing with this story. Mark goes on to give YouTube what he calls actionable advice about modifying their YouTube ID system, but I don't believe that YouTube's actually going to do anything. I mean, for example, the only kind of response that we've seen from them so far is Team YouTube replying to him on Twitter saying, "Jumping in here, we'll be looking into that and circle back as soon as we have an update. Also, please continue to dispute claims if you believe they were made in error." And so the unfortunate thing is I think the only way this gets fixed is if public pressure and awareness of the situation gets so big that Toei has to back down. And in the past day, we've actually seen several massive creators backing Mark, including the likes of Moist Critical, who said in his own video,
I think people really need to focus on the fact that it is Toei Animations that have chose to abuse this and attack content creators, no matter how.
Mark videos? 0. You did something horrible to a good content creator who has done nothing but publicize your stuff. Maybe it's time to act like your very own heroes. And I personally, right, this is Philip DeFranco speaking separate from the content and coverage of this piece, 100% agree with boycotting Toei Animation. It sucks because I like a lot of their work, but I can't in good conscience support them off your first purchase. Then, let's definitely talk about some huge drug news, specifically the drug company Vera Pharmaceuticals, which was notably previously owned by Martin Shkreli, aka Pharma Bro, under the name Turing Pharmaceuticals. They're in the news right now because Vera and its parent company have now agreed to a $40 million settlement to resolve price gouging claims from the Federal Trade Commission, multiple states, and a related class action suit. Right, for those that don't remember, the two companies, Shkreli and his associate Kevin Malidi, were accused of hiking up the price of the life-saving medication Daraprim by around 4,000%, with an FTC complaint saying that they jacked up the price after obtaining exclusive rights to it and before concocting, quote, an elaborate web of restrictions to illegally block competitors from producing a cheaper option. So you have the FTC saying that the $40 million will serve as relief for the victims here, and adding that the companies are required to make Daraprim available to any potential generic competitor at list price and to provide prior notification of any planned pharmaceutical transaction valued at $25 million or more. And on top of that, the deal bans Malidi, who continues to deny wrongdoing, from working with any pharmaceutical company for 7 years. Also, in a statement about the agreement, FTC Chair Lena Khan wrote, "While litigation against Shkreli continues, the order shuts down the illegal enterprise run by his companies and bans his associate from the industry. This strong relief sets a new standard and puts corporate leaders on notice that they will face severe consequences for ripping off the public by wantonly monopolizing markets." And as far as Shkreli, he's in prison right now, but his problems aren't over. Right, currently, he's serving a 7-year prison sentence for an unrelated securities fraud conviction over hedge funds that he operated before launching into the pharmaceutical industry. As the FTC chair said, it's not over for Shkreli. Right now, it is scheduled for December 14th. He is going to be on trial. It's an antitrust trial for allegedly directing the price gouging operation. And while obviously Shkreli, like everyone else in this country, deserves a fair trial, there is part of me that wishes that his lawyers went, "Hey, I know that we said we were going to defend you, but our price just went up 4,000%. Sorry, it's the market. You understand. You get it." And then finally, the last thing that we're going to talk about today is something that I promised that I would cover this week. And I just ask you two things. One, please watch this piece in full. I think it's important to consume the entire thing rather than, sounding off 2 minutes into it. And two, if you end up being as concerned and kind of horrified at what may be in our future, please share the message. It genuinely feels like I'm watching a slow motion train crash, and the people that I thought would be covering it are covering stupid fucking stories about the vice president wearing wired headphones. But that said, here we go. So like I mentioned yesterday, very briefly, there is an incredibly alarming trend that we're seeing in state legislatures that poses a very serious threat to democracy, and I want to break it down. So at the very top level, this centers around who has the authority over elections, and specifically efforts by Republican state legislators to take the power away from election officials. Right, among a long list of things, according to a report from a collective of election-focused nonprofits published back in April, not even halfway through the 2021 legislative session, legislators in 36 states had filed 148 bills that would allow them to, quote, muscle their way into election administration as they attempt to dislodge or unsettle the executive branch and or local election officials who traditionally have run our voting system. With the report going on to say that these efforts would give legislatures the power to disrupt election administration, and adding that if enacted, these changes could make elections unworkable, render results far more difficult to finalize, and in the worst case scenario, allow state legislatures to substitute their preferred candidates for those chosen by the voters. For example, just by the time that this report was published back in April, legislators in at least 16 states had either proposed or passed measures that would remove certain election administration powers from the purview of the governor and other executive officers and place them under the control of the legislature. And as the authors note, that would significantly alter the balance of power, especially because the state legislators have typically had limited roles in election administration. Now, there are a number of ways that legislators have proposed stripping power away from the executive and election officials, but one of the main ones centers around state and local election boards. Right? They control elections in many states and are usually appointed by the governor, secretary of state, or local governing bodies such as county executive. For example, in Georgia, the secretary of state used to chair the state election board, but under the state's new incredibly restrictive and heavily criticized election law, the legislature is now given the power to choose the board chair, effectively giving it control of the board. And that board that they've essentially been given control of is also now given unprecedented abilities to intervene in local election administration. As Barton Gellman of The Atlantic notes, the new law also gives the state board the power to overrule and take control of voting tallies in any jurisdiction, for example, a heavily black and Democratic one like Fulton County. And on top of all that, noting that the state board has also now been given the power to replace local election administrators with a hand-picked substitute who will have the final say on disqualifying voters and declaring ballots null and void. So all of that by itself, already incredibly alarming, but as the April report notes, perhaps the most worrying of the election interference bills are those that would create the serious prospect of an election crisis by giving state legislatures the opportunity to overturn election results they don't like. Noting there that the bills introduced in Arizona, Missouri, and Nevada would create opportunities for the legislatures in those states to hijack the process for certifying election results and choose a winner that does not correspond with the popular vote. Right, so for some quick context here, the party for whichever candidate wins the popular vote in a state gets to designate electors who will then go to the Electoral College and vote for the person who won their state. And while state legislatures do technically have the power to decide the rules for how electors are chosen, since the 19th century, every state has certified electors who support the popular vote winner. But if a Republican legislature can overrule the popular vote cast for a Democratic president, they can send Republican electors to the college to vote for the GOP candidate instead. And if all of that sounds vaguely familiar to you, it's because it was the main tactic that Trump's team employed after the election, trying to convince Republican legislatures in states that Biden won to take control of the results and send Trump electors to the college instead. And while some election officials did their damnedest to try and make this a reality, ultimately no states took this route. But y'all, based off of everything that we've already talked about and something very concerning that we're going to touch on in a second, essentially 2020 was a trial run. A very messy, shittily put together in the moment, embarrassing failure, but things are different now. Among other things, as the April report notes, there are a number of bills currently being debated in states that represent a transparent response